Welcome back to Northwest City Politics in the Know with Juanita. We're very happy to have you joining our show with us again this week. We're always glad for people like you, people that are interested in what's happening in the cities. Each week, we have someone on from CCX's viewing area to tell us about what are the current and future happenings of the city so that you can keep track of what's going on. And then if something is going to be pursued that you're particularly interested in, then we do encourage you to take the time to reach out to the mayors and city council people and let them know where you're coming from. So we're glad you're with us. City, tonight I'm very happy to welcome Mayor Tim Willson from Brooklyn Center.
Glad to be here.
Get us all updated on what's happening in Brooklyn Center.
Yep.
And then I've had you on before, so I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself out to the people in the audience that don't know you yet.
Okay,
a lot of people do.
Yeah, I've been in office 12 years and was in planning and zoning 12 years before that. So my name is Tim Willson. If you ever have to spell it, there's 2 L's in Willson. Makes a big difference on the email type addressing stuff. And I've been the mayor of Brooklyn Center for 12 years and very happy to have been. And I'm looking forward to the future as well. So.
Then I asked you to think a little bit about what's some of the up-and-coming future issues that you're kind of looking at now, but you know you're going to need to get a lot of citizen input on.
Yeah, I think the opportunity site is the biggest one. You know, we have 32 acres just north of what used to be the Kohl's building.
Right.
Home furniture will move into that, but we've picked out a developer that we think has kind of a plan, but it's very early in the process. And there'll be a lot of negotiating, a lot of talk, a lot of public hearings to determine exactly what that area will look like. We are talking about market rate housing, senior housing, townhomes, grocery store, theater, and a couple of other amenities that they have on their master drawing. But all of that is still up for discussion.
Right. So that's going to be an area that we want to encourage people out there. When these meetings come up, you really need to hear from them, right?
Yes, absolutely. Otherwise, you know, the council will make those types of decisions and do the best they can.
Right.
And we'll look at it from the perspective of what's good for the tax base, what's good for property owners, what's good for the city in general.
Right.
So, yep.
Are there any particular new businesses that have come in recently or close to coming into Brooklyn Center that we can mention?
Yeah, Tim Hortons is coming in. They'll be over where the car wash used to be.
Okay.
There'll be a Sprint phone dealership in there as well. And then Topgolf is coming in and Home Furniture is coming in.
Oh, right, yeah.
And Luther Auto is bringing another dealership in. Luther Auto now, by the way, is their highest paying taxpayer in the city. And some time ago, when the FBI building came in, they had been the highest taxpayer, but they also were the building and the redevelopment that kind of touched off everything else.
Oh, right.
Yep.
And then there's a whole group of people that are involved, including the city council and staff, about encouraging entrepreneurs in your city.
Yeah.
As it's kind of an outreach kind of thing. That maybe you can tell us about how some private individuals are meeting this need. I think they're using like some buildings that aren't always used on the weekend. Maybe you can flesh that out.
Yeah, the council has talked for some years about trying to get incubator entrepreneurship businesses going within the city based on the diversity and how many individuals we have that want to start new businesses. I'm aware of 3 different strategies at the moment. There's a private individual that wants to use one of the health-based office buildings, want to use their parking lot for Saturdays to have entrepreneurs come in and show their wares, make contacts, all of those things. The Liberian Consulate has approached us as well, and they work with the Liberian community and have a business association of sorts.
Okay.
I mentioned the Earl Brown, or the Earl Brown College in the strip mall on the other side of Devani's.
Right.
They're interested in looking at that building and bringing mid-level entrepreneurs in, not startup businesses per se, but businesses that can come in and grow. The city is looking at and working with the developer of Shingle Creek Crossings.
Oh, okay.
And we're talking to them about getting land and putting in startup business entrepreneurship space where they can come in, they can rent, lease, do whatever, a small site to get their name out there, to get their product out there and see if they can grow their businesses.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and this is one way to bring a lot of new jobs to your community, right?
Yeah, I was in New York some time ago. Mayor Bloomberg had invited us out. They had heard what our police department was doing with the diversity and stuff, and they wanted to hear more about it. At that time, they told us in New York itself, 60% of their new jobs being generated are from new entrepreneurs, where small businesses, 5, 10 employees, and that's what was driving their economy. Now, recently we have seen where North Minneapolis has started to put an entrepreneurship plan together as well, and they have some funding, and they're starting to bring those entrepreneurs in as well. So it's the right thing to do. It's the time to do it, and we're kind of excited about being able to help touch that off and to bring some of those skills into our city.
Yeah, it's interesting how it takes time to build up to where, now there's all kinds of people with the idea that we should do something with these, probably partly springing off of that recession we had back there not too long ago.
2008 and 2009, the Depression, as I've heard it called as well, really hit us hard. We had a lot of foreclosures. We had a lot of people lose their homes out of that whole process. But it also tanked the economy as well. And now we're coming back to where this year alone at that 184,000 median housing range is about what it was in 2007, 2006. So we're getting back to kind of where we were in that whole process. To go along with that, we have been very cognizant of Brooklyn Center's image, basically, and have worked very hard in cleaning up that image across the metro. Cleaning up the crime, the housing, the apartments. We've had great support from the apartment owners in helping with some of that too. So you mentioned it earlier about the road systems as a great amenity that we have. You can get downtown, but all these other factors have been looked at as well, and we've been successful with, which makes now Brooklyn Center look more like that shining example where people want to come in.
Right. And then there's a program that several of our cities are involved with, including Brooklyn Center, called Open to Business.
Yes.
Let's talk. We don't need to go in detail, but let people know what's available there.
Yeah. There you'll have to get hold of city staff to talk to them, but there are some mentoring. There is some very limited financial support. Not from the city so much as from private industry. But we encourage all of those things to happen, and we'll put people in touch with the resources that they will need to bring a business in, either a startup or a new business or a medium-sized, large-sized, whatever it is.
Yeah, the easiest is to call City Hall, and I think Rob Smoland is the person that's doing it for a number of our cities, I believe.
Could be right.
But we won't. We'll just let people approach the city and find out who they should contact. Because sometimes people have ideas, but they need some help in shaping them so that they can move that next step.
Yes, and that's where the mentoringship is very important, because they will help with a business plan. They will help you avoid some of the traps and the pitfalls that businesses have run into in the past.
Well, and Brooklyn Center has a lot of immigrants, and this is a group of people that particularly more of them want to start businesses and do start businesses.
And do start business, and they have very good skills to doing so. But you're absolutely right. They're immigrants to this country, or they're new to this country for whatever reasons, or they're new to the metro, new to Brooklyn Center. And there's a lot of pre-work that has to be done. There's a lot of great understanding that has to be done as well as to how do you get your business off the ground? What ordinances do I have to follow?
Right.
Where can I get funding, you know, bankrolled, those types of things. And the city is really willing to help with those issues.
And help people think through that so that they can get to that point where they could.
Yep.
And then, in fact, it was just in the newspaper the other day, Highway 252 in Brooklyn Center. And they were making references to it. But maybe you can tell us first, because you've been studying this. You had a Highway 252 corridor study?
Yes. There's a 20-year plan that Met Council has on transportation, basically, in our area as well. We had gotten pulled out of that plan, 252, and when we found out about that, then we as a city decided we were going to go forward, do a study, and we did, on 252 and what it would take to have that reconstruction and made into a highway. The reasons for doing that are that the 66th intersection is the worst intersection in the state of Minnesota.
Yeah, in the whole state, that's what the article said.
Yes, and out of the top 100, all of the intersections from 85th all the way down are in that top 100 for being the worst intersections in Minnesota. And 70th, 73rd are close. 73rd is actually real close in there as well. So we've looked at that and said, okay, we're not going to wait for the federal government. We're not going to wait for the state to do something with it if it gets worse, and it will get worse.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Given the volume of traffic that's on that roadway. So we went out and did a study. We've gotten acceptance now and funding for 66th and 70th for pedestrian overpass on 70th. And we're about 10 million short to having the whole project go forward, which is pretty good because it's about a $35 to $40 million project. We talked about time earlier in getting redevelopment done.
Roads are even longer, I think.
I believe we're in our 6th year of talking about 252. And Councilmember Roach, when he was on the council, was adamant about looking at it as well, and we ultimately did. But I know it's been 6 years just to get to this point, and there's no guarantee at all that we'll get past this point and some sort of construction will happen. So.
And so they're thinking of some short-term strategies in this area at 68th and 70th. Was that to put in like a clover leaf?
Well, 66, the reconstruction that would be there would be a split diamond. Or a folded, excuse me, a folded diamond is the proper term. But it's basically a clover leaf that has one side folded back on itself. So you can get that traffic to flow east and west through the on and off ramps, but more importantly, 252 comes all the way down and takes out that stoplight, and it becomes a freeway to get through. 70th would be the same thing. That light would be gone. 73rd would also be the same thing. And then as you start looking farther north, Met Council and Hennepin County and Brooklyn Park would like to see that whole corridor from 85th all the way down. There will be other stoplights, at least one, I believe, that'll come out of that thing. But given that, given the growth in the suburbs and given the anticipated growth of the traffic on that highway, you have to do something to mitigate the crashes and all the expense.
And it's kind of the connector between what 694 and 610 going into 94. There's a lot of traffic that gets diverted there.
Well, that's actually a great point, because now that 694 or 610, excuse me, has been completed on both ends, that makes it a central connector from not only Maple Grove side, but also from the east side of the metro as well. And there's a lot of traffic coming down 252 and going back home on 252 as well, getting to jobs. So.
And what did you say the estimated cost for it was?
For 66th and 70th, it's about 45 million, or about 40 million or so. It keeps going up a little bit every year as we keep going along. Originally, we thought it was going to be like 35 million, but I would think it's going to be a little more. The whole corridor is about 100 million to do that. And to go along with that, then MnDOT wants to put HOV lanes in.
Oh.
At least going south out of the whole thing. And that'll add another 10 or 15 million as well.
Oh, right.
But that funding's being looked at from the state level. We have, we're looking at it at the federal level as well. And we have actually some federal grants already. But I always come back to 66 is the worst intersection
hopefully
in Minnesota.
You can get that first,
yes.
right?
So.
Well, I think prior to that, several years ago, it used to be 81 and 169. And eventually they got that taken care of, right?
The Devil's Triangle.
It was a long time there, too.
Yep, that was called the Devil's Triangle,
Right.
and that was that whole section there. And I distinctly remember working with Mayor Lampe in Brooklyn Park in supporting that whole effort and speaking out on the fact that, yeah, that's a very poor area and needed to be reworked. And it took years before that one got reworked as well. So.
And then kind of going along with it is the Blue Line, the LRT business, and then there's some bus rapid transit lines. And maybe you can tell us what's the status of the Blue Line LRT thing at this point?
The Blue Line LRT needs to have in the federal budget funding to complete it.
Right.
Basically, it also has to have some state funds, although engineering is going forward, plans are going forward. Whether or not we can get to the construction part will depend on the funds. But it's a major transportation system within the state as well. It'll tie into the downtown Green Line, the Blue Line, the Southwest Line LRT, that quite frankly, residents in Brooklyn Center are going to want to use.
Oh, of course.
Because we'll put in high and rapid transit between using 63rd, pretty much Avenue, to get from Brooklyn Center to the Blue Line. And then there's the options to go north on that Blue Line or to go south on that Blue Line. There's jobs south, but more importantly, to the north in Brooklyn Park, in the Oakdale section that they have there, there's a lot of interest by new businesses to come in and build. But they're leery in doing that if there isn't transportation to get the workers there.
Because if you don't have the workers, it's not going to work.
Yep. So.
Now, there's a group to help move this forward called the Blue Line Now Group.
Yes.
Who or what are they, and what are they about?
The Blue Line Now Group was formed about a year and a half ago, and it's all the mayors from all the cities that have a stop on the Blue Line light rail transit in the plans. With the exception of Brooklyn Center, we do not have one, but we've been very supportive as well and been very part of the process from the very beginning. The organization just had individuals go to the National League of Cities in Washington, D.C. And Councilmember Dan Ryan was there, so he was representing not only the city, but also the Blue Line Now Light Rail Transit Committee as well. And I haven't talked to him yet to see how that turned out. But there's a very strong lobbying effort and lobbyists that we've hired to try to get into that federal funding for that light rail transportation. And there's two reasons for doing that. One is it's very expensive, so the state isn't going to be able to cover it. The second is if we don't get into that bonding and that funds from the federal government this year, those funds will go somewhere else. And they'll go somewhere else within the United States. So we're pushing real hard to try to get it in and get that funding. Once we have that funding, we can do construction. If we don't get that funding, then there won't be construction. And my fear is that it'll be another 20 years
Oh,
before it
yeah,
even gets
yeah.
close to that again.
So we'll have to all keep our fingers crossed. And
Yep.
then, is there any room for citizens to give input on this process to the government,
Yeah,
federal government?
Well, of course, call your federal representatives. You know, and they're in support. Senator Franken, or excuse me, used to be Senator Franken.
Right,
He
right.
was in support. Senator Klobuchar is in support. We have a number of the representatives at the federal level who are in support as well. Senator Smith is in support. Tina Smith now as well. So those are calls that yes, you could make. More importantly, though, we have to convince a majority of those houses to go along with it, basically. And
okay.
that's where all the horse trading's going to happen. And it'll happen in the last 3 or 4 weeks of session.
Right. So see what happens.
Yeah.
And then the bus rapid transit. Where are those 2 lines located, and what's happening with that?
Yeah. This morning,
Oh,
at about 10:45, I was at the C-Line groundbreaking ceremony.
Okay.
And the C-Line is a rapid transit from Brooklyn Center's transit hub
okay.
all the way through Minneapolis to Bloomington,
Oh, wow.
which would be higher speed, less stops,
Right.
easier travel, and more better travel, basically, more amenities within that system. There'll be electric, is my understanding, for
Okay.
some of the buses that will go. But more importantly, it's a conduit or a transportation strategy where people who are living in poverty and living below that poverty level, like in Brooklyn Center, Brooklyn Park, Crystal, Fridley, now they have affordable and rapid transportation so they can get to points south. Eventually that'll go to the north as well.
Right.
The second line that is about $10 million short of being able to go forward as well is the D line. And that has a slightly different connotation,
Okay.
but it also starts at the Brooklyn Center
Okay.
transit hub, and that's where it'll come from as well. And that'll be rapid transit also. So if you tie that into the blue line, the C line, the D line, blue line being light rail transportation,
Right.
those 3 areas, along with 252, now look at a good regional transportation system for the northwest corner. And
we've lacked one for a long time.
I mentioned that this morning as
Right.
well. It seems like the northwest corner of the metro gets the short end of the stick way too many times.
Right.
And so I'm pretty excited about where we're going with the whole process and where the other government entities, Hennepin County, Met Council, the state, have determined that we need to put better resources in place.
So what is the status of those 2 bus lines?
Where
are they at in the process, and when might they come into reality?
Well, I don't know exactly what their timeline is for building on the C line, but probably next year.
Okay.
Would be my guess. But they have the funding.
Okay.
They did the groundbreaking. They're able to go forward with construction.
And then I wanted to make sure that we had a little bit of time to mention your commissions and that whole process of becoming one of the commission members for the city.
Yes.
And it's a way of giving back to your city, but I think you gain from the whole process too, don't you think?
Oh yeah, you absolutely do. You get exposed to what the city's doing. You get some of the information as to where the city's going. That whole process starts with an application at City Hall. And we mentioned the 4 commissions. There's financial, park and rec, housing, and planning and zoning.
Right.
And those have been commissions for the city for a long, long time.
Right.
There's a 5th one as well, and that's the Charter Commission.
Oh, right. Yeah, you're a charter city.
Yep, and I actually served on that for 8 years as well and chaired it for a couple of years. But that is not appointed by the mayor and ratified by the city council. That's appointed by the Chief Justice of Hennepin County. And it is for a reason, to separate it from city politics. So there's another 15-member board that if you really want to know how a charter city runs and how your charter city is set up, that's where you'll learn those things. So.
Well, and charter cities can make determinations for what's going to happen more simply than a statutory city that has to go through the state legislature, right?
It depends.
Okay.
I mean, in essence, yes. But statutorily, they have things they can do that the legislature's already
Right.
allowed them to do.
Oh, okay,
Same-
right. So
same
that's
as a
just kind of a 6 of
Yes.
one, half a dozen of the other kind
Yep.
of thing.
Charter cities are generally smaller residential cities. Statutory cities are generally the bigger ones, like Minneapolis, St. Paul,
right.
Duluth, Rochester, those. And each has its pluses and
Right,
minuses.
right.
But a charter city specifically has 15 members on the charter who are residents, who are neighbors, who are part of our city, and who are looking at that charter and can make changes to it as well as they feel appropriate. The charter's been there for a while. It's pretty stable
Right.
in all of its things, but the Charter Commission looks at it every year to say, you know, has, as an example, things really changed in our city, and we know diversity
Right,
has.
right.
How in the charter can that
Be worked with.
be
right.
worked in or worked at some point in time? There's two ways to make those changes to the charter. One is the Charter Commission, which can recommend, suggest, put together the paperwork to the City Council.
Okay.
And if the City Council agrees unanimously, then it goes into effect. The other way is just the opposite. If the City Council determines there's something they want changed
Right.
in the charter, then the Charter Commission has to agree to it.
Ah.
Now, if the two parties don't agree,
Uh-huh.
then it's the possibility of going to a vote,
Oh,
a
sure.
referendum
Right.
vote by the citizens at the next general election. And if you recall, a few years ago, there was a charter amendment for ward systems in
Right.
Brooklyn Center. And the council didn't, not all the council members went along with that
Right.
idea. So it went to referendum, and the citizens voted on it. They voted not to have a ward system. That's how that whole process
Right, right.
works and how changes happen to that charter.
So people need to find out a little more for their own benefit what matches up with their interests and their skills and their abilities. They
Yep.
can go to the meetings.
Yes, oh yeah. The Charter Commission meetings, the commission meetings, the council meetings, just about any meeting that's in the public sector, the public is certainly welcome to attend,
Right.
can attend. They may not be able to always provide public testimony or
right.
public input, but they certainly can come to all those meetings. Those meetings are posted. They're widely disseminated, so people know when they are and when
Right.
they're happening. So they have the opportunity to be a part of that whole process.
Well, I want to thank you so much
Yes.
for being on our show again and helping people out there learn what's up and coming in the Brooklyn Center issue. And we're glad that you've been with us, and we hope you'll come back again. Bye.